Good afternoon. This is Pam with Follow Your Brush coming to you from stormy Georgia this afternoon. We are just in the beginning of receiving this long-awaited hurricane. So it's coming, and the rain has just begun. So I'm playing and want to just play with you and bring you along with me if you'd like to come. What I'm talking about today, I was doing this on my own and then I thought, what a great example. I covered this with paint, wet paint, and I put on some cling wrap, in this case saran wrap, but it can be any type of cling wrap, that doesn't matter. Covered it up and you smush it down while the paint is still wet. You wait for it to dry. And then when you take this off, you have different patterns to look at. And as I was looking at this, I thought, what a great way to see what we call negative shapes. And we talk about negative shapes a lot, and it took me a long time, let me get this straight here, to be able to see negative shapes, what they were, what it actually, whoops, camera's going funky here, sorry about that. What negative shapes were and how do you recognize them? Negative shape is the space in between the object. So in this case, if I were looking at this and wanting to fill in some, what we call our negative space, took me a long time to see negative space, to understand the concept. But once I did, then it's easy to see. And so that's why I thought this might be a good example to show you. Got my water here, and I've got my handy dandy Levinson brush. And by using this saran wrap, you can see where it made the shapes around the shapes, or in between the shapes. Does that make sense? I hope so. So what I'm going to do now is let's come in here. For instance, I see a tree here and maybe even here, but I'm going to use a color that you can see really well. I want to come into the negative space and paint that, which will in turn make that other object pop, as we say. I'm coming in here kind of carefully. I'm trying to stay in it's almost like coloring within the lines. But as you do this, as you do your shapes, you don't always have to do it. Like sometimes as you're painting, you can make your shapes pop with, just as you begin to paint, you'll begin to see other shapes appear. Took me a long time to understand that and see it, but once you see it, then you kind of can't unsee it, if that makes sense. And when I did this saran wrap this morning, I thought this is a great lesson, so to speak, in identifying those negative spaces and being able to paint, leaving that space, or even sometimes if you don't have a space like we do right now with the saran wrap, you can leave space either with white on your paper, or as paper dries and you see things emerge, then you can come back in and fill in the other spaces to make the positive space pop, if that makes sense. I hope this is making sense. It took me a long time to figure it out. But you see, as I'm doing this, hopefully you can see it, the other shape is going to appear. And in this case, it's the space that was left with the saran wrap. So as I fill in the other negative space between the objects, the tree pops out. You see how that happens? Now, this is not the only way it's used, obviously, when you're painting. There are a lot of principles that this applies to. And I'm not going to get into that, but what I wanted to do was just try to have a visual that if you have trouble seeing negative space in your paintings or understanding how to look for it, when I did the saran wrap, I thought, oh my gosh, that's a perfect example. So look how just this part, just look how that tree popped out. You can see it now. Let me do this part here too. This is important later when you're painting and you're doing values. Your values are going to change between objects, and you want to look for the darker values are going to make the lighter values pop. So you don't always go for trying to make your paint your whites last. In watercolor, we usually leave the white, recommend leaving the white, and go light to dark. So by having this light space left from the saran wrap and then painting just the other area, look at the picture that it's giving me. Isn't that fun? And I thought, I'm going to do a video on this while I'm sitting here playing and waiting for the storm. Hurricane is on its way. It just started to rain. The leaves are just starting to blow out there. It is supposed to get really bad tonight, but we're good. We're ready. This is actually very addicting, and it's kind of fun once you get going. And you don't have to do everything all one color. I'm just choosing to do so just as an example. But you can see how the dark colors make the light pop. And I just think that's so cool. And so if that's something you have trouble with and you want to just practice being able to even see it, it's like once you see it, then you can't unsee it. But sometimes it took me a long time to be able to see those shapes, to know what to leave and what to not leave, to make that white shape appear, or make my object appear. I hope this is making sense. So the saran wrap trick is just kind of a fun way to help train your eye to see those spaces. And then when you do, here's a nice big spot. When you do, then as you're painting, and sometimes as your painting dries, you see objects, you see things drying, see things appearing in the shadows or in the way the paint dries on the paper, and then you're like, oh, I didn't see that before. I see a flower shape there, or I see a tree, or I see a design. And it really enhances your painting as you learn to see these things. So this is just one little exercise you can do to help you find your negative space. Take advantage of it. Look how this picture's coming out. I mean, it's really kind of pretty. I like it. It's a great way to train. If I were still teaching kindergarten or something, I would probably have my kids do this because it's a lot of fun. So you take your saran wrap, you put it on while it's wet, kind of press it, smush it down, and it forms the shapes on the paper. Then when it's dry, you take it off, and you can see the spots that it leaves, and you can fill them in and practice seeing those negative shapes, and then see how your painting can come alive. So that's it for now. I just wanted to share that. I thought, wow, that's kind of a cool example of how to see the negative shapes. I hope I'm not repeating myself. I'm probably am. But thanks for joining me with Follow Your Brush today. And as we look for negative shapes to make our whites pop, look how that's coming out. It's just really pretty. I really am happy about this, actually. I like the patterns that it made, and seeing the shapes. It's like when we were kids, you know, when used to get those books from highlights and look for hidden shapes. That's what this is like. So as I paint and continue looking and finishing up my negative spaces, I bid you farewell. And if you're in the path of the storm, stay dry and safe, and hope there's no damage to your life or limb or home or property or family or anything else in the path of this storm. We're as prepared as we can get. And so for the time being, while I still have power, you know what I'm doing? I'm playing. Have a great evening. I think that came out really fun. I'm not finished yet, but I'm going to finish it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.